Robin in DC, you're on with Dan and Matt. How are you?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm getting ready to be told I'm incoherent.
I'm doing okay.
Well, the reason I said that, right, is because without being able to identify what is ultimate and foundational in your worldview, you will not have grounds to make any predications.
No, that's not true. I don't need ultimates. All I need is relatives. I can tell you that without knowing whether or not there's an absolute minimal or absolute maximal temperature, that it's warmer today than it was yesterday. And I can also tell you that it's pleasant today feeling to me. I don't even have to know what the actual temperature is, and we don't even have to have a scale of temperature. And I definitely don't need an absolute standard of temperature to be able to tell that. And I don't need to have any sort of, nor does there need to be any sort of absolute grounding. All I need is to presuppose, as everybody else does, the foundations of logic: identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. That's it. Once that's done, everything else is open.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I was listening to this in our time, and there was a caller before who said, and you agreed that there was no God. Am I correct?
I am not convinced that there is a God, and for many of the gods, I'm convinced that the God doesn't exist. What the hell does that have to do with what you're talking about?
Well, we're talking about, again, when we're talking about God, in this kind of a conversation, God would be that which is the absolute cause and creator of all temporal states of affairs. Okay.
I don't see where there's any demonstration that any such being or thing exists. But if you're going to be if you're going to be that loose with the definition, then you're not talking about a God in the traditional sense. So it would be like somebody calling in to say that God is that which explains the universe. Well, that's not the God that people believe in. So what is it you're trying to get to?
I'm making a distinction here. God would be personal. He would be a mind. Okay, that would be.
No. How do you know this? What you're just making assertions now.
I am defining a term. I'm not saying at this point whether or not it is actual.
Okay, so define your term.
We're defining it. Okay.
So I'm writing it down. Let's go.
I'll say this again. God is that which is the personal, absolute cause and creator of all temporal states of affairs. Okay.
Okay. Here's the problem. Go ahead. How do you know that any such being exists and that those properties are the properties of the being that actually exist?
We know that God exists, and
no, we don't.
Self-disclosure. How do you know that?
Wait, we know that God exists because of self-disclosure?
Yeah, you asked me how I know that God exists, and I told you I know God exists.
So God has disclosed himself to you.
Correct.
How?
In natural and in general and in special revelation.
Okay. So how do you know? Give me an example of special revelation and how you know it's revelation.
Special revelation would be, for example, it would be God's direct communication with individuals, and this direct communication is, in this case, we'll be talking about the Bible. So it would be God's direct.
That is not direct communication with an individual.
Hold on.
No, you hold on. You hold on. The Bible is a book written by men, as far as we can tell. Even if you want to claim that it was inspired, you have to prove that, not assert it. So if you want to say that direct revelation, that is direct revelation from a God to an individual. No book is involved.
Okay. I'm defining, you asked me what special revelation is, and I'm defining it. Okay. Special revelation is God's direct communication with people, and that revelation specifically has been recorded infallibly and inerrantly.
No, sir. You do not get to point to a story that claims direct revelation and claim that it is direct revelation. That is dishonest. That is like saying, hey, my aunt told me that she heard from aliens, therefore she heard from aliens. That is a fallacy.
Yeah, or if Matt wrote a book about his aunt telling him about aliens, and then I read that book, that is not special revelation to me either, which you did say that you had, personal disclosure, and I'd say that's not true. Anybody can read the Bible. That doesn't mean that we have any more knowledge than, any other person.
The fact that you are unconvinced or do not believe in the revelation has no bearing upon whether or not the revelation is true.
Correct.
Yes.
But we didn't say that that's what had bearing on it. This isn't whether or not we believe, whether or not Dan and I believe is irrelevant. What we're saying is you cannot prove that this was in fact direct revelation. So you don't get to call it direct revelation.
What is your standard of proof?
I'm not going to just accept somebody's word for it. How would you show that this in fact is direct revelation from God?
You invoked proof. I'm asking you, what is your standard of proof?
No, sir, that's not the way this works. You are going to present your argument and it will either be accepted or rejected based on your argument. My position, which I've made abundantly clear, is that I don't think it's possible to prove direct revelation, and neither did David Hume, because revelation is necessarily first person, and to everyone else, revelation is hearsay. It's not my fault that you have decided to stake your argument on a claim that you cannot prove.
Okay. 30 seconds ago, you just told me that I cannot prove to you.
And I retracted it, so drop it and do what you could say you can do or go away. Can you prove that there's direct, can you prove?
So you just did.
Can you shut the fuck up? Can you demonstrate the truth of your claim that God has directly revealed something to someone?
Okay, so you just asked me if I could prove something. What is your standard of proof?
I don't. Wow. Are you dense? Your standard of proof is the one in question. You are convinced that you have evidence that is reasonable to conclude, you are convinced that you can reasonably demonstrate that God directly communicated with someone. I am not convinced. Make your case or go away.
Right. So again, in order to prove something, right, I must be in coherence with somebody's ultimate.
Nope, you're going away.
That was like the first thing we talked about. We don't need that ultimate standard to demonstrate something to be true.
See, I'm willing to believe anything that somebody can demonstrate. And so he's like, oh, I want to know what your standard of proof is. Well, my standard of proof, or the quality and quantity of evidence that determines what is sufficient to believe something, changes depending on what the claim is. If you say, I just got a new puppy, I'm going to take your word for it, because I did too. If you're going to say that puppy was abducted by aliens, I'm going to need more proof.
Yeah. And especially with the God claim, because there are literally thousands and thousands of books of people claiming they've talked to God.
Yeah.
Like that they can't all be true because they have mutually exclusive claims in there. So we have to figure out which one's real and which ones aren't. I haven't found any yet that are showed me to be real in any meaningful sense. So
it's a shame that was wasted, because if, for example, let's imagine that there was a God who had directly communicated with someone. I don't know how to show that that's true. Matter of fact, the only way that I can think of for a reasonable person to be convinced is for that God to forcibly convince them. Because how do you tell whether or not you're hallucinating or whatever?
Here's the thing. We have this tradition of individual people talking to God, because it seems to be the individual people that are having these experiences most of the time. Obviously, that's not true for, some cases. There's group phenomenon and stuff. But like, if there was a God, right? Like, why would he not talk to everybody at once, or at least a large group of people? Why would he just talk to one person? That seems like one of the worst possible ways you could communicate, right? Like, if you want to convince somebody that you're real, why talk to just Moses? Why not get to everybody?
Yeah. Why do you need Moses? And by the way, who had a speech impediment, so Aaron's got to do the speaking for him. Why doesn't God just show up and talk?
Yeah. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. But I'm just a human, man. I'm just a human. I don't know.